Jai Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopijana Malaba Kiribadhari Gopijana Balaba Kiribadhari Yasudanan Nanavaraja Janodana Yasudanan Nanavraja Janodana Yamuna Tirabana Chagore Yamuna Tirabana Chagore Jai Hurat Umadava Kunyabirati Joy Radha Madhuva Kunyabirati Upijana Malapa Kiribadhati Gopi Nana Balaba Kiribadhati Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tirabana Chagote Yamuna Tirabana Chagote Jai Hurat Umadva Kunya Bihari Joy Hurat Umadva Kunya Bihari Hara Madhuva Jabihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya also Tada Satashi Shrimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chadananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anandakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Purava Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopakavata Saim Kun Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturadam Ki Jai Jagadasami Ki Jai Yamunamai Kajai, Shimati Lasi Devi Kajai, Samveda Bhakta Vrindi Kajai, Go Premananda Haribo. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda. So, today we're going to read again from the fourth canto. I know there was a comment made last night that every time there's a disappearance day that I go to the fourth canto. And I was actually thinking about that, should I go to the fourth canto? Should I not go to the fourth canto? And I actually had a talk with Bhakti Shumar's disciples about it last night, which I can share with all of you, is that we have different relationships with Krishna and the spiritual world. There's the Shantaras. Of course, in the spiritual world, Shantaras has to be mixed with a little bit of dasha at least to be in the spiritual world. Because pure Shantaras is, Ramajoti time. But higher than Shantaras is Dasharas. And of course, in relationship with the spiritual master, we don't have like the buddy-buddy type of friendship. But still, the spiritual master is the friend. Actually, even Krishna has friends that are awe and reverent towards him. And then, of course, it's interesting that when Prabhupada left the planet, or when the spiritual master leaves the planet, the disciples sometimes have to assume a paternal or maternal mood in relationship, isn't it? It's like you see that with Prabhupada. They were giving Prabhupada advice, do this, do that. We don't want you to leave. Of course, the conjugal mood is not there. But the point is that all these higher rasas, the four higher rasas, are all imbued with the mood of service. It's really so. If we start thinking about the conjugal ras, and of course that's not in relationship to Guru, that has the highest expression of service. That's really one way of seeing the different rasas in their hierarchy. That the service becomes actually more intense, and it's completely dedicated in Dasharas, obviously, completely dedicated, and even in the Vaikuntha planets, one is completely dedicated, to the service. But it becomes much more intense and much more deep, if I can use that expression, as you go up. So to me, the relationship, of course we glorify Prabhupada and we glorify these great devotees and everything like that, but really if we want to manifest their presence in our lives continually, it's at least from what Prabhupada taught us. And it's interesting, I look to see if, talking about these purports, particularly the purport I'm going to read today from text 52 in the 28th chapter of the fourth canto. And these purports, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur really didn't say much. He did say, yes, this is connected to the Guru, but he doesn't go into the detail that Prabhupada went into. So these purports, and many of the purports of Prabhupada is he's paraphrasing what the acharyas say, and of course giving his own realizations. But this purport is basically, 99.9%, Prabhupada's personal realization. And of course, he's making reference to the acharyas, he's making reference to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's making reference to Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, of course, which he always makes reference to. But really, it's definitely, this purport is definitely Prabhupada's direction. These three or four verses here. I'm not going to get into the next verse. But 3 or 4 verses here, beginning with, 50, 51, 52, are actually really like Prabhupada's specific direction as to what we do when a great personality passes away. So, to me, this is how I connect with the departure of a person. I mean, of course, there's an emotional side to me also, which some people don't believe. But anyway, there's an emotional side too. But to me, the relationship with Prabhupada is always one of, how can I serve you? Like Prabhupada, he asked his spiritual master, how can I serve you? Prabhupada said that was the only question he asked. And then Prabhupada's famous quote, the worship of the spiritual master is not simply some festival of fruits and flowers. So I see that in Prabhupada's mood, that his exclusive dedication to the instruction of his spiritual master, and of course his Prabhupada's actions, which actions are a manifestation of the mood of someone. What do they say? Actions speak louder than words. So, to me, I'm not going to be dissuaded from reading these verses when someone passes away. Although, I'll speak a little bit about my own experiences with a particular great devotee like that. But anyway, so let me continue with this. So we're going to read from text 52 of the 4th canto, chapter 28. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'll just read the Sanskrit and then the translation. Brahmana uvacha katvam kasya sivo kovayam shayano yasya shochasi janasakim zakayam vam yinagre vichacharitaha. The Brahmana inquired, how are you? Who are you? Whose wife or daughter are you? Who is the man lying here? It appears you are lamenting for this dead body. Don't you recognize me? I am your eternal friend. You may remember that many times in the past you have consulted me. Of course, this is the super soul. When a person's relative dies, renunciation is automatically visible. Actually, Prabhupada called this smarshana vairagya. I mean, renunciation at the crematorium. But consultation with the super soul seated within everyone's heart is possible only when one is completely free from the contamination of material attachment. One who is sincere and pure gets an opportunity to consult with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his Paramatma feature sitting within everyone's heart. The Paramatma is always the Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within, and he comes before one externally as the instructor and initiator, spiritual master. The Lord can reside within the heart, and he can also come out before a person and give him instructions. Thus, the spiritual master is non-different from the super soul sitting within the heart. An uncontaminated soul or living entity can get a chance to meet the Paramatma face to face. Just as one gets a chance to consult with the Paramatma within his heart, one also gets a chance to see him actually situated before him. Then one can take instructions from the super soul directly. This is the duty of the pure devotee, to see the bona fide spiritual master and consult with the super soul within the heart. When the Brahmana asked the woman who the man lying on the floor was, she answered that he was her spiritual master, and that she was perplexed about what to do in his absence. At such a time, the super soul immediately appears, provided the devotee is purified in heart and following the directions of the spiritual master. I'm going to repeat that. At such a time, the super soul immediately appears, provided the devotee is purified in heart by following the directions of the spiritual master. A sincere devotee who follows the instructions of the spiritual master certainly gets direct instructions from his heart, from the super soul. Thus, a sincere devotee is always helped directly or indirectly by the spiritual master and the super soul. This is confirmed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. If the devotee serves his spiritual master sincerely, Krishna automatically becomes pleased. Yasha prasadat bhagavat prasadaha. By satisfying the spiritual master, one automatically satisfies Krishna. Thus the devotee becomes enriched by both the spiritual master and Krishna. The Supersoul is eternally the friend of the living entity and always remains with him. The Supersoul has always been ready to help the living entity, even before the creation of this material world. It is therefore stated here, Yanagre Vicha Charta. The word agre means before the creation. Thus, the Supersoul has been accompanying the living entity since before the creation. So anyway, I'm not going to read more of this purport, but I wanted to read from Bhakti Chur Maharaj's book, Ocean of Mercy, about Prabhupada's final pastimes in this world, and then his immediate response, which is in the afterword of the book, concerning Prabhupada's final pastimes. Prabhupada's leaving this world. So, news of Srila Prabhupada's critical condition was spreading, and anticipating that Prabhupada might soon leave his body, Sriman Narayan and Ramakrishna Bajaj came to see him. They were old acquaintances, and at one point they wanted to speak with Prabhupada privately. So he suggested that the rest of us leave the room. Before leaving, however, I pressed the record button of the tape recorder on Prabhupada's bedside table. When I told Tamal Krishna Maharaj what I had done, he thanked me and said it had been a smart thing to do. So in other words, they wanted to have a private meeting with Prabhupada and to discuss something that Prabhupada's disciples shouldn't hear. In other words, there was some plan. You know, they wanted Prabhupada to say something and they could represent Prabhupada in a particular way that, anyway, they could say Prabhupada said this and there was no actual recording or witness to it. When the meeting was over, I took the tape recorder to Maharaj's office and played it. Sriman Narayana and Ramakrishna Bajaj had asked Prabhupada about who would be his successor, and he told them that he was not going to appoint one. He was giving the legacy to all of his disciples, all of his followers. A few days later, in the evening, actually, part of that story is not told right here, is that they noticed the tape recorder was on after they had asked the question. Prabhupada responded, and they asked that it be turned off. They are actually upset about it. A few days later in the evening, several of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers came to see him. As they sat on chairs around his bed, Prabhupada admitted that he had used strong expressions while preaching. He begged their forgiveness and requested that they ask all the other Vaishnavas to forgive him as well. Srila Bhan Maharaj, sitting next to Prabhupada's head, told him that he had been in a position to chastise them and that there was no offense on his part. He expressed his appreciation for Srila Prabhupada's achievements in preaching around the world, fulfilling the prediction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Tamal Krishna Maharaj showed the group copies of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Bhan Maharaj, his voice ringing with appreciation, admitted that they were rich both inside and out. Inside, the books were rich with the wisdom that Srila Prabhupada had presented, and outside, the artwork, layout, and printing were of the highest quality. Oh, sorry. Hey, maybe someone should turn up the volume here. Yeah, turn the volume up on the main volume. Normally I'm louder. I'm just extremely tired from last night. I didn't get to sleep till 10 o'clock. So. Yeah, I think that's good. Sorry about that. Tamal Krishna Maharaj told them how Srila Prabhupada's books had been translated into so many languages and how in Moscow the Russian government had shown its appreciation for the books in a certificate noting their contribution to peace and progress. Everyone listened with rapt attention as Maharaj described how a skyscraper in Manhattan had become a Krishna temple and how 108 temples had been established. All over the world. Let me skip ahead because we don't have much time. At one point, when Srila Prabhupada opened his mouth and I was about to pour a fefew drops of water, Babaji Maharaj commented, "See, he is still chanting." Though Prabhupada was not making any sound, I could see his tongue vibrating in rhythm. Then Damodar Prasad Shastri, who was standing next to me, said that Srila Prabhupada had left his body. I could not accept that, so I said, "Please check him carefully." He took a small piece of cotton cloth and placed it in front of Prabhupada's nose. It did not move. I told him to use the stethoscope, and he did, but there was no heartbeat. I was on the verge of breaking down, but Damodar Prasad placed his hand on my back and said, "Please don't cry. He is going back to Godhead. Let him go. Don't cause any hindrance to his journey back to the Lord." Everybody understood what had happened. Bhishma was one of the first to react. Tears started to flow from her eyes as if a water pot had broken. Manihara Das was sobbing, and I told him what Damodar Prasad had told me. Srila Prabhupada is going back home. Let us not cause any hindrance to his journey back. The devotees kept chanting. Some left the room. The senior men got together and discussed whether or not to put Srila Prabhupada in Samadhi that night. Then news came from the leading Vaishnavas of Vrindavan that the following morning he should be taken to all the prominent temples in Vrindavan for a final darshan of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada's body was placed on his Vyasasana in the temple room. Narayan Maharaj led the kirtan throughout the night. In the morning we placed the body on another Vyasasana and carried it in procession to all the Vrindavan's major temples. When the procession returned to the temple, Prabhupada's body was placed next to the burial pit, which had been already dug. Narayan Maharaj guided Tamal Krishna Maharaj and me in performing all the required rituals, bathing the body and dressing it in new clothes. Narayan Maharaj himself handled the kopina, but he did not wrap it around the groin and tie it at the back. I wondered how Srila Prabhupada could be put in samadhi without the kopina being properly tied, but I did not say anything. Then Tamal Krishna Maharaj and I went into the pit, and Srila Prabhupada's body was lowered in. While it was being lowered, the untied kopina got wrapped around my wrist. I quickly untangled it and tied it around Prabhupada's back. I felt that he was still there, taking care of everything. Narayan Maharaj guided us through the arti and the rest of the ceremony. Then he told us to put salt around the body, and afterwards the devotees began to pour loose soil into the pit. A profound feeling prevailed in my mind. I did not want to leave Srila Prabhupada's side. I wanted to stay and continue serving him in his samadhi. So you see, this mood of service is there. I mean, he was ready just to stay there. When Narayan Maharaj climbed down and the devotees began pouring more soil, I still did not move. But Tamal Krishna Maharaj knew what was going through my mind. He just grabbed me by my hand and dragged me out of that holy pit. Srila Prabhupada had entered into Radha and Krishna's eternal pastimes. So he basically he couldn't give up that mood of service, which is what actually we're talking about in the Srimad Bhagavatam here. And yesterday I was talking to the devotees I mentioned before for about half an hour after the whole ceremony was over. And I was explaining that, the topmost quality of Bhakti Chud Maharaj was his unalloyed service to Srila Prabhupada, his desire to serve Prabhupada. And, of course, there were many other wonderful qualities manifested. But we know from the Vedic literatures, the Bhagavatam, Yasha Bhakti Para Bhaktir Yata Devi Tata Guru, that one who has implicit faith in the spiritual master and in the Vedic literatures, everything is revealed. Also, Yasha Devi, another verse. Anyway, I forgot. I'm too tired to remember the other verse right now. That one, Harabha Bhakta Shikato Mahagana Mano Ritena Sati Davatobahi Yashasti Bhakti Bhagavacha Kinchana Savarganas Tatra Samasrate Sura Harabha Bhakta Shikato Mahaguna Mano Ritena Sati Davatobahi. There's the verse. That one who is devoted to Krishna and the spiritual master, then all the good qualities of the demigods are manifest. So in other words, when we see a devotee with all these good qualities, these come from the primary point of his dedication to service of the spiritual master and service of Krishna. Just like, what was I going to say? I was going to talk about something. It's hard to be tired. Anyway, so, all right. So what I was going to talk about was the 26 Vaishnava qualities. You hear about these different qualities. These qualities are sometimes, one is manifest and sometimes another is manifest. They're always there with a pure devotee. But these qualities come because of the primary quality of dedication, service attitude. That's the point. Just like if you try to imitate a great Vaishnava and you say, well, I'm supposed to be self-controlled, doesn't eat too much, that's one of the things. And you try to take these qualities individually and manifest them, then you're really not going to be successful, because if you're not actually on the topmost quality, dedicated to the service of Krishna and the spiritual master. Because as that verse states, Harabha Bhaktasya Kato Mahat Guna Manoratena Asati Dalvatobahi, then it's simply based upon Manoratena, that is the chariot of the mind. And we know that in this material world, if someone exhibits certain qualities that we may consider to be admirable, and they're not devotees, those qualities are actually coming from the modes of nature, which happen to be affecting the person at a particular time. And the Bhagavad Gita states that the modes of nature are in constant flux, defeating, let's say, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, defeating the mode of ignorance, and you get the idea. So the modes of nature are in continual flux. So really the essential or the primary quality, sometimes you talk about mukhya and gona, the primary quality. The primary quality is devotion, and then the other qualities manifest because of that devotion and service attitude. And that was Prabhupada's teaching. So anyway, you see this with Bhakti Maharaj. His primary quality is just with Prabhupada is, how can I serve you? I mean, he really epitomized that quality to the highest degree. Let's continue reading. The afternoon after placing Srila Prabhupada's body into samadhi, I went to his room, lost in the emptiness of his departure. I couldn't believe he wasn't there, although he had always taught us that we should all have to leave the material world one day, and showed us by his personal example how we should prepare. His absence was difficult to accept. I knelt by Prabhupada's bed and held my head on his fine woolen chadar, folded on his pillow. It still bore his fragrance. Unable to control myself any longer, I broke down and cried, as if my heart wanted to escape from its cage, but could only melt in a torrent of tears. I just let my agony pour out in sobs. After a while, whether minutes or hours, I had no idea. I felt a hand on my shoulder and looked up. It was Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He did not say a word, but his touch told me that he understood and shared my anguish. Several devotees had gathered in the room, and they were all looking at me. Embarrassed, I walked out with Maharaj by my side. The next day, I left for Mayapur with Jayapataka Maharaj, carrying an ornate metal container holding flowers from the Samadhi. That's the Pushpa Samadhi. We were also talking to the disciples of Bhakti True Maharaj about the Pushpa Samadhis that are going to be established. One in Vrindavan is going to be established. At least one in Vrindavan. We were talking about the arrangements. They would be buried in a Pushpa Samadhi, above which a temple would be built where devotees and others could worship Srila Prabhupada and feel his presence. That's the Pushpa Samadhi in Mayapur. Mayapur was somewhat of a relief for me. The memories were not so fresh there, and I was surrounded by friends and godbrothers. Still, my world felt vacant. The first time I dreamt of Srila Prabhupada, the dream was so real that although in the back of my mind I was aware he had departed, I perceived him so clearly that my heart danced with joy at being with him again. I offered my obeisances and held his lotus feet, bathing them with my tears. He lifted me up and asked whether I was chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra on my beads. Unable to speak, I remained silent. He asked me to show him my tongue. When I did, he took hold of it with his thumb and forefinger. What a dream. And as the thrill of his touch ran through my entire body, he asked me, "Are you using it to chant the holy name?" I tried to say something, but he was still holding my tongue. And then my struggle to speak woke me up. With a wonderful feeling of meeting Srila Prabhupada still vivid in my mind, I sat on my bed and wondered about the meaning of the dream. What did he want to tell me? It seemed that he was reminding me that Maya would try to hold my tongue and prevent me from chanting, but that I should never stop. No matter the difficulties, I should never stop chanting the holy name. So that is another thing that occurs when spiritual master leaves the planet, and those of us who experience that, it's like a crossroads at that particular time. What should I do now? Now, and you actually see that many devotees who were serving Srila Prabhupada physically, personally, Vapu, they really couldn't maintain themselves after Srila Prabhupada left, because they didn't really grasp the Vani. Actually, Prabhupada would say sometimes that Vapu is just very temporary, and the Vani is more important. So because of that, you find a lot of devotees, actually maybe even the majority of devotees, didn't continue chanting. Of course, their love for Prabhupada was always there, and you see that Prabhupada saved many of them at the final instance of their lives. There's many, many stories about that, devotees who left the association, devotees, and even engaged in activities that were, let us say, against the regulative principles. But when it came time to leaving their bodies, they took shelter again of the devotees. The devotees assisted them. They went to Vrindavan, or they went to temple, and there's many stories of glorious departures, even devotees who had left the movement. So Prabhupada actually keeps saving people too. So anyway, so there is a junction there when the spiritual master leaves the planet. It's just like, what should I do? Where's my support anymore? Should I just like lay back and not do anything, or how can I connect more with Prabhupada? So there's a question that comes in someone's mind when the spiritual master, I want to be with him. I want to be with him. So what is the right strategy? And this is what we were talking about yesterday with the devotees. They were asking, what is the guidance? What sort of guidance you're giving to connect with Bhakti True Mars? And I was explaining that you should think of how you can contribute according to your own capacity the most to Bhakti True Maharaj's mission. And first of all, you have to understand his mission. And of course, I've stated before, as a loyal ISKCON follower, that his mission is to serve the mission of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. But there are other aspects to his mission. I was even discussing with the devotees that perhaps you should do like one of those mind maps and say, his dedication to Prabhupada, maybe put that on the top, and then all these other missions that are connected with his main mission, and see how you can connect. And it requires some introspection, and what I said to them was drilling down. You really drill down. How can I connect? I personally connect. And you can do that in consultation with your godbrothers or other advanced devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement. But it's really important to drill down. Now that he's gone, how can I connect? What aspect of the mission of the spiritual master can I connect to right now and just focus on? Like Prabhupada focused on the mission of his spiritual master preaching in the Western world. And that was his, just one focus. You don't want to become too splayed out or diverted from the one focus, because if you, what do they say? Master, or what's that? Master of everything. Jack of all trades, master of none. So it's really important to focus to be able to accomplish something. And Prabhupada really focused. He focused on the book distribution, book publication, book distribution, because those are the orders he got from his guru. Just think about that. Because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told Prabhupada that if you ever get any money, print, distribute books. He also said if I could sell the marble from the temples, I would use that for book distribution. And Prabhupada actually was so heavy about that point. I remember I was in Los Angeles one time. Prabhupada came back, and he saw the devotees who'd spent money on a project that he didn't really want them to spend money on. And, with more marble and everything like that. And the first thing he said when he sat on the Vyasasan is that my spiritual master said that if you could sell the marble from the temple, you could print and distribute books. And, this is after devotees spent $200,000 in those days doing something. Anyway, so he said, no matter what the difficulties, I should never stop chanting the holy name. I felt immensely grateful and remembered Srila Prabhupada's assurance that although he would someday disappear from our vision, he would always be present. For a while, in order to lead us into the spiritual path, he had become visible to us. And then he had left our sight to motivate us to move forward toward the spiritual world, to find him. So it's like Krishna, for example, you can say Krishna was extremely cruel leaving Vrindavan. But actually, that was to bring the Brajabasis into a more intense frame of consciousness. Because had Krishna not left Vrindavan, of course they were always intense, with Krishna, but it was much more intense when Krishna left Vrindavan. You find in the Lita Madhava that the gopis were committing suicide, basically, because they couldn't bear to be without Krishna. So when the spiritual master leaves, it's actually to help the sincere disciples focus more. That's part of his lesson, not only the final lesson, but in which he shows us how to leave the body, but his lesson in separation, because separation is much more intense than meeting. So he said he left our sight. Actually, Bhakti Trumar said he left our sight to motivate us to move forward. So that's one of the reasons Prabhupada left our sight towards the spiritual world, to find him. When I had decided to join ISKCON in Mayapur in July of 1976 as a full-time devotee and shave my head, a thought had run through my mind that my hair would grow back in 2 months. That if I did not like being a devotee, I could return to my old life. So you see, this is like a junction there. It's like a test. It's really a test, not just the final test of someone leaving the body, but the test of what happens afterwards. It's actually a test of one's dedication. These 2 months have turned to 40 years, but they have flown by, and by Srila Prabhupada's causeless mercy, my life has found its perfection. My realization is that I am eternal part and parcel of Krishna, and that my life's goal is to develop my loving relationship with him, is all due to the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, who took me by the hand and led me to that relationship. I know that I have found the true path to perfection, and that achieving success is only a matter of continuously moving forward without deviation. Sometime in the future, it does not matter when, I will reach my ultimate destination and once again be at the lotus feet of my beloved Srila Prabhupada. So it's actually quite touching. Heart-wrenching to hear this. So, anybody have any questions? Yes.
I think it's very important to know that the instruction that Srila Prabhupada is giving to Bhakti Maharaj to always become faithful to the holy name as the foundation for everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Find his strength and sustenance from the holy name, from where he can expand and perform all kinds of service.
Yeah, that's actually the most essential instruction. Thank you for pointing that out. One of my disciples wrote me last night, she's in a different continent, and she said she gets bewildered when people get into all these other, not that we don't do rituals, but all these other different activities, and they're not understanding the importance of the holy name. So we get diverted sometimes. And, these are all there are Vaishnava rituals and things like that, but really they cannot compare to the holy name. It says it, even if you compare like thousands of Ashwamedha sacrifices to one chanting of Hare Krishna, you're an atheist. I mean, that's the comparison. You shouldn't compare, thousands of Ashwamedha sacrifices. I mean, it's just so important. And thank you for saying that. That's we should never forget that. That's our main business. We probably called it the Hare Krishna movement. He didn't call it the Gaudiya Math. He didn't call it the Bhakti Vedanta Society or anything like that. Of course, originally he had his League of Devotees. That was a preaching strategy. But Prabhupada called it the Hare Krishna movement. And Prabhupada was so pleased, even when there were articles in the newspaper or magazines that criticized us, it said Hare Krishna. Some devotees were complaining. They're saying so many bad things about us. And Prabhupada said, no, they're saying Hare Krishna so many times. So we got 2 more minutes. Any other questions or comments? Questions, comments, problems? So, it's a time for reflection. I mean, whether or not Bhakti True Maharaj was our spiritual master or friend, it's a time for reflection of what is the purpose of our life and how we have to rise above, the external world, the world of our vision, and enter into something very deep in Krishna consciousness and a mood of service. I mean, that was my point for reading the Bhagavatam again. It's service. It's service. The gopis are serving to such an extent they're willing to go to hell. I mean, that's the topmost service, isn't it? I mean, I can't say I would be willing to go to hell. Maybe I'd be willing to go to Hawaii or something. But not, that really, I mean, to go to hell, and Prabhupada came to hell. That's here, in case you haven't figured that out. Because for Prabhupada, it was hell, even Vrindavan. And living with people who are keeping meat in their refrigerator and seeing these dirty hippies, I mean, just like, you can't imagine. So Prabhupada was show this mood of the gopis by coming to America. And Prabhupada actually said that the book distribution and preaching of Krishna consciousness is done in the mood of the gopis, which is the highest mood of service. It's not something, sometimes people think the gopis means just like a female form of worshiping Krishna. They want to be a gopi because it happens to be sexy or something like that. But that's not the point. The whole mood of the whole essence of the gopis is intense desire to please Krishna with absolutely no consideration of their own happiness. That's the mood of the gopis. And if you want to be a gopi, that's what you have to be. Okay, that's a prerequisite. Before you have that, don't try to be a gopi. And you have to serve Radharani. If you're not serving Radharani, you are not a gopi. Because even Chandravali, she's serving Radharani. She's doing all of her service to please Radharani. Okay, on that happy note. Jai Shri Shri Radha Goloka Nanda.